you. Oftentimes you hear a lot about like these online funnel systems, and really what we've created with this format is what I just call kind of our offline.
This is the Sales Bible Podcast, episode 286, Dinner Seminar Campaigns for Lead Generation, an interview with Rylee Meek.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers, and today we meet Rylee Meek. He's the founder and author of the Social Dynamic Selling System, which, according to Rylee, quote, turns dinner seminar marketing into a science. See, I used to do this for school districts, administrators, and it created an opportunity to present to many people all at once. It was a productive way of selling, and if you've never heard about this before, this is the right episode for you. Rylee shares his campaign processes based on his new book, Food for Thought: How to Use Dinner Seminar Marketing to Grow Your Business in Ways You Never Thought Possible. Hey, are you hungry? If so, with no further ado, let's eat. Welcome, Rylee. Are you ready to babble?
Yes, I am.
All right. You are the founder and CEO of Social Dynamic Selling System. What's that?
The Social Dynamic Selling System at its core is really dinner seminars and selling one-to-many versus selling one-on-one.
Dinner seminars. I've been to a few of those. Like, you see insurance agents doing that, or like I've been to some of those Primerica ones. I've been to some for real estate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Attorneys sometimes do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They're doing estate planning and things like that, which is, how I was first introduced to it wasn't even from that. I mean, I remember, I think my parents or even, friends of friends that would go to these seminars or educational events and things when I was little, but I was introduced to it a little bit different. And I think what we've done with the Social Dynamic Selling System is we've, diversified it, rather than just financial advisors, attorneys, or, quote unquote, those type of professionals doing it. We're doing it in a number of different verticals and different business opportunities.
So before we get to that, maybe you could speak a little bit. What's the challenge that you're trying to address in your mind?
Sure. Yeah. When I first started out in my sales career, I was always, I loved the idea of being able to kind of set my own time and my own commissions and things like that. I was ultimately in control of my income. But I think one of the things that I had the realization of it is as much as I had control of my income, I was still capped by the amount of time in a day. And depending upon how long my presentation would take, whether it's, 10 minutes or 3 hours, ultimately there was only a certain amount of time in the day for me to pitch my product. And the beautiful thing about the Social Dynamic Selling System is we're able to do, multiple presentations, but not just to one person at a time. We're doing it one-to-many. So we're getting a group of people together that are, interested in what you have to say. You do 1, 2, 3, 4 rock star presentations on a weekly basis. And it allowed me to really leverage my time while increasing my income opportunity as well.
I can see lots of issues with this. I can see lots of opportunity in this. So can I walk through some of the issues if it's okay with you?
Absolutely.
Like, you got to get people to get into a car and drive someplace and show up at some set time, right?
Right.
And that's inconvenient for busy people. How do you get around that?
So I oftentimes refer to, doing dinner seminar campaigns. We're fishing with corn dogs. And what I mean by that is, there's not a fish on earth that would sustain its life solely eating corn dogs. But if I put it on a hook and throw it in the water, every single fish will bite that hook. And so the hook that we use is a free steak dinner or a free chicken dinner, fish dinner, whatever it is. And that's what's getting them to take time out of their busy schedule to come on out and listen to what I have to say. Is I'm buying them a free meal on my behalf.
And it doesn't have to be dinner, right? It could be breakfast, it could be lunch.
Sure, absolutely. I think that's all going to be dependent upon who your ideal customer is. What is that client avatar or customer avatar? And we'll tailor any specific campaign to, what that person is going to enjoy the most. If it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, it just seems that I've found the most successful campaigns that we do tend to be more of like a steak dinner.
But I would think too that would maybe depend on the industry.
Of course,
because I do remember. I'm not told. Don't think I'm some negative Nancy here. I've done these actually for breakfast with success. But usually for back in those days, I was doing school district superintendents.
Sure.
And we could maybe
get
them to show up in the morning, right? Get them to work by 8:30, 9 o'clock, so they're not gone much.
I was just going to say, I think that's the important aspect is always starting with the end in mind. It's not like we just willy-nilly, start inviting people. We want to break down who is your ideal customer, what time of days are going to work well for them. If it's stay-at-home moms, that's going to be a different time than if it's that corporate executive that works long hours. A breakfast may be a better opportunity for someone like that. So it's definitely everything that we do. What I've developed with this social dynamic system is a process. There's a rhyme and reason to everything that we do, and that's why it takes time to get one of these campaigns up and running. It's not like I would just say, okay, tomorrow we're going to do a seminar. It takes some time to find that ideal customer, properly create the message, craft that message of what you're, how you're inviting them, where you're inviting them, and then, building the presentation all the way up until, the day of the actual event.
So maybe you could walk us through briefly, because we can't be here all day, but maybe you could give us the highlights.
Sure.
What is your process? What's this, 1 to N?
Sure. Well, always, I always say we start with the end in mind. So who is your ideal customer? If somebody is currently marketing right now, do they know what their true client acquisition cost is? And then in trying to back into it, because there are some industries and models that this just is not going to work for. If your end product is a $48 widget and there's no additional bites at the apple or no lifetime value of that actual customer, this just isn't. I'll be the first to tell you this is not going to be the proper form of marketing for you, just because the cost to get that client in that event or in that seat is going to be too much, in which you would never cash flow. You just wouldn't have a return on your investment. So ideally, if we have a product that can earn, 1,000 plus per sale, a little bit higher ticket item, that's what this is really going to work well with. And once we've identified that customer or what that ideal person is or who that is and where they are geographically, as well as demographically, then we can look at actually where we should host this venue, which could be, dependent upon that client or what you're looking to sell. It could be Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, or it could be the, Texas Roadhouse. It's all dependent upon what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. And then once we know that and we know where we're going to, send our invitations, we can start to craft our message. And we want to make sure that everything flows from, the invitation to the person on the phone taking the call, to the confirmation call, to the person showing up to do the actual presentation. If there's other people involved, there is a process to this. And, I've put it together. I don't know if I'd mentioned this, but I have put this together in a book. It's actually a new Amazon bestseller called Food for Thought, how to use dinner seminar marketing to grow your business in ways you never thought imaginable. Kind of a long title, but Food for Thought basically takes people through this process of setting up their own campaigns.
So, well, let's dig in a little bit more into this invitation process. How do you write those? These go out I've gotten postcards. Are they letters?
Sure.
Are they cold calls? All of the above?
Yeah. So part of it, I mean, once we know what our goal is or what our intention is, that's going to be the type of invitation. We do a ton of direct mail. And I've found that is the highest return on investment from inviting people out to these events. We've done Facebook ads and other things, but the highest return on investment from a marketing standpoint has definitely been direct mail. Plus, it's easily measurable. If I send 5,000 pieces and I get 50 calls, it's easy for me to track and make sure that we're getting the proper amount of RSVPs. So crafting that message, it could be a simple postcard. It could be a wedding style envelope. It could be a FedEx, priority mail type package. Heck, it could be a folding chair. It depends on what we're trying to do and accomplish. Because the goal, everything that we do has, a specific goal, and sending that invitation has one goal. It's not to sell your product. The one goal is to get them to pick up the phone and call an RSVP. And then once we get them to the event, then we have, a separate goal, which would be delivering that presentation.
How do you make sure that they show up? People call up and say they're going to do things. They often back out. Do you have a follow-up process to make sure, don't forget?
Certainly. Yeah. We have a 24/7 call center that takes these inbound RSVP calls. We, there's certain things that we do to subconsciously get them to make that commitment. We're asking what their food order is. If we have a follow-up email, or sometimes we'll even remail out a follow-up, with additional content that we're going to be covering. And then always the day before, we're calling back every single person or emailing or both, really, just to reconfirm. Essentially, it's a reminder call, but we're just reconfirming that they are showing up at the event, because we have to let the restaurant know how many meals to provide and prepare for. So we usually get a 85 to 90% show up rate of those that actually confirm, utilizing our direct mail pieces.
Wow. That's impressive. So while we move to the presentation, how does that work?
Sure. So we've really, you've probably been to a number of seminars where, it's run to the back of the room and, you're mesmerized, now go buy my course or whatever it is. That's definitely not what we do. We can certainly, help still fill events and things like that doing that, but we are definitely more of we've got them in the room. Now it's your job, or the goal of the presentation is ultimately not to sell anything, but really just to get that potential client or customer to know, like, and trust you. Because if they know you, they like you, they trust you, certainly they're open to doing business with you. And all we're really trying to do is establish you as that authoritative figure in your particular industry. And then ultimately, if you're charismatic enough and likable enough, at the end of it, we usually, with sense of urgency that we're creating, we get them to schedule or book that follow-up one-on-one type of appointment. So the goal of, I say the goal, the mail piece, the phone call, everything has a specific goal. The goal of the seminar is really just to get them to spend that one-on-one time with you. Oftentimes you hear a lot about, like, these online funnel systems. And really what we've created with this format is what I just call kind of our offline funnel system. If we identify who your client is, because the whole time through this process, we're sifting the sand. Like, who is your ideal client? Who's your customer? Is it, 6'2", blonde hair, blue eyes, females? Great. We can, there's data out there that we can buy that list of that type of person. If that's, I'm being very, vague on that, but we can buy that data. We can send a personalized invitation out to them, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson or whatever. Ultimately, if I buy 10,000 names, I mail out 5,000 of them, I get a certain amount of response, and I'm continually sifting the sand, because the goal at the end of the presentation, I'm not looking to spend time with those that don't want to spend time with me. I just want the 5 or 6 people that I've wowed, and now I can spend the most productive time with those to actually close the deal.
I like it. I want to go back to one more thing one thing that you said previously. You said you'd send out maybe 5,000 invites. Is that the kind of return rate that we should expect? I mean, I have no idea. Is that how many
Sure.
prospective leads you have to have, or I should say, cold leads that you would have to have in order to make this work?
Well, again, it depends on what the goal is to invite. If your goal is to have a room of 300 people, then no, we would definitely need to send a lot more invites than that. But what I've found, for the most part, if I can get a room of 18 to 24 people, that is like an ideal size for me. And what I like to do, and again, it depends on the product. If it's a home remodeling product or a cosmetic product or whatever it is, you need to be able to connect with each one of those 18 to 24 people. Once you get rooms of 40, 50, 60 people, a lot of people just get kind of lost in the crowd. And if I can do 2, 3, 4 of those presentations on a weekly basis, full well knowing that I'm going to be able to actually sit down, try to close the sale with 10 of those, that's what I'm looking at. But again, it depends on if all you need to do is make one sale a week and you're happy, that's what makes your what makes pays your bills, I guess we'll call it, then great. We can design a campaign specifically for that. But if you need to make 100 sales a week, we'll design a campaign specifically for that. So all of that is dependent upon what it is what you're trying to accomplish in your product or offering. But if I can get a 1% response rate on a direct mail piece like that, I'm pretty happy. That's a pretty good response rate for us to definitely, and that means we've chosen the right people, we've chosen the right restaurant, we've crafted the right message to pique their interest enough to come on out. I mean, if you have a crappy offering, I can't get a 1% response rate if you're trying to sell, ice up in Anchorage, Alaska. That's going to be different.
What's the biggest mistake you see people make when they execute on these?
The biggest mistake is definitely not sticking to the plan, because part of this process, anytime if I was to take on a new client, I make them commit to eight weeks in a row of campaigns, partly because it takes some time to get this up and going. If I was right now, for all of my companies, we're scheduling events in September right now, because you have to write a list, print the mail pieces, send them out. We want them to hit homes, a couple weeks in advance. And so all of that takes time. And if I do that, I plan 1 week for, mid-September right now, and then I crush it, great. But now I got to wait another 6 weeks for my next campaign. Or if I completely fail, now I got to wait another 6 weeks for my next campaign. Where if you can get into a groove and you can tweak your presentation or your delivery style while you're in the process, for sure you'll have that down after that 8-week campaign. So not trusting the process is definitely the biggest mistakes people have.
How can people find Social Dynamics online, Rylee?
Socialdynamicselling.com. Again, socialdynamicselling.com is probably the easiest way. It's a website. All of our contact information and everything is up there. And then there's even I think there's some interesting giveaways and things like that on there as well.
You mentioned a journey module. You had some that that the listeners could listen to. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a journey map that really kind of breaks it down. Partly when I first started this out, it was like, great, I know how to do all of this in my own head, but how do I teach somebody how to do this? And so we broke it down into basically 6 actual, actionable steps of how to create your own campaign. And that's on there. It's a free download to, get you started on the right track.
I'll make sure and place those links in the show notes, and you also on LinkedIn, because that's how you and I connected. Hey, Rylee, I really appreciate you visiting us here in Sales Babble. This is good stuff. I have done this, with success in the past, and and I think that's where I really wanted to have you on the podcast. This is good stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it, Pat. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I can really identify with this topic because I said I actually used to do this a few years ago, and it really worked. Now, it does require a lot of follow-up. We called people a lot to make sure they were going to show up because we did have to tell the restaurant how many people are going to be eating, and that really helped. Also, too, the guests that came, they enjoyed the opportunity to network with their peers. It's a win-win in lots of different ways, so if you've never thought about doing this is something for you to think about. To find links to Rylee's book and his website, you can find those in the show notes at www.salesbabble.com/286. Yeah, 286. Hey, one of the best ways that people hear about Sales Babble is from the listener reviews. If you could go to your favorite podcast app and leave a 5-star comment, hey, I would really appreciate it because word of mouth is the way podcasts spread. I was digging into it. I just got a 5 out of 5 by DG, and they say, Pat is such a great host. Personally, I do everything I can to avoid sales, which I know is hurting to business. But after listening to Pat, I find myself thinking, hey, I can do this. It doesn't have to be icky or hard. I can be myself and still sell what I have to offer. I'm excited to keep learning more from Pat and his guests. Is that sweet or what? Well, that's all I got for today. Thanks again for setting aside a little bit of your time from your busy schedule. I really, really appreciate it. So until next Tuesday, take care and have a highly successful and a profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.
This is a production of Habanero Media.